So I've been doing Dear Prudence for 6 years. And when I started doing it, I answered a few letters from people who were adults who had very abusive, terrible, neglectful childhoods. And there are a lot of people over and over dealing with the issue of, what do I owe my now elderly, abusive parent, someone who gave me a terrible childhood, who is now old, maybe frail, sick, broke. There are lots of people dealing with this very agonizing issue, and I thought it was a really interesting one. I did some looking around. It's almost completely undealt with in the psychological literature. And I started saving these letters, putting them in a file called Abusive Parents. And I went to my Slate editors and said, look, I want to do a longer story than a Dear Prudie letter and really examine this issue. What do you owe these people? What can I tell these people? So I went back and got in touch with about 9 people who had written me these letters. And all of them agreed to talk to me. And I had sometimes 1-2 hour interviews with people telling me all about their childhoods. And almost every one of them at some point said, you know, I've never told anyone this story full out the way I'm telling you. And it was one of the most powerful experiences I've had as a journalist, and I have been a journalist for more than 30 years. I'll tell you, one thing happened during these interviews that has never happened to me before. I was talking to one of the women who had written to me with an original Dear Prudie letter. So she was about 40, a college professor. Her stepfather had sexually abused her. Her mother had kicked her out of the house. She was living on her own from about age 16. She made her way in the world, got a college degree, a PhD, and I just thought she was so heroic, and what she had been through was so awful. And she was able to speak this in this very kind of objective way. And at the end, I was so moved by what she told me that I just burst out sobbing. And I've talked to a lot of people on a lot of stories over the years, and this had never happened to me before. It was really embarrassing, almost mortifying to find myself in that situation. But actually, you know, I pulled myself together and she said, no, I appreciate that you felt something from what I told you. So I wrote the story, and in it, at the end, I said, a lot of these people get pressured by loved ones or friends. Oh, have closure. You'll feel so guilty when this parent dies. And I explored how the falsity of the whole closure myth and the pressure for people to forgive maybe things that are unforgivable. And I said, sometimes there's no closure, there's just closing the door. So I really expected to have this be very controversial, because to say sometimes you have to walk away from a needy parent, that's a pretty tough line. The piece came out, the response was absolutely overwhelming. There were thousands of letters over several days. It became this incredible online therapy process, and hundreds and hundreds of readers wrote in their own stories. Let me tell you what happened to me. And other readers would write in and say, I never realized how many people are hurting and suffering this way. I'll never think about this the same way when I hear why someone is estranged from a parent. And I thought this whole experience really summed up Slate so beautifully. I got this idea from our readers. You know, they were writing to me, letting me know that there's this issue that's unexplored. My editor said, yeah, run with it, explore it. And then when it went up, there was this real additional benefit from the comments that the readers put in. So it became much more than just my story. And Um, when I think of what makes Slate great, for me, that experience really sums it up.